The scorching twin suns beat down on Staff Sergeant Sarah Chen as she drove her patrol vehicle across the sandy wasteland of Proxima B. Sweat trickled down her neck, despite the cooling system in her standard-issue armor. It was her third patrol this week, and like always, she expected to find nothing but sand and more sand. But today was different. Sarah's eyes caught something unusual in the sand. Tiny footprints, too small to be human and too distinct to be made by the local wildlife. She stopped her vehicle and stepped out, her boots crunching on the hot sand. The tracks were fresh, probably made within the last few hours. "Base, this is Chen," she reported through her comm unit. "I found some unusual tracks in Sector 7. Going to investigate." "Copy that, Chen. Keep your beacon active." The reply crackled through her helmet. Sarah followed the tracks, her hand resting on her sidearm more out of habit than fear. The footprints led toward a cluster of red rock formations rising from the desert floor. As she got closer, she noticed the tracks became uneven, as if whoever made them was stumbling. Then she heard it, a weak cough coming from a shallow cave between two rocks. Sarah approached carefully, switching on her helmet lights as she peered into the darkness. What she saw made her gasp. Huddled in the corner was a humanoid figure, but one unlike any alien she had encountered before. It was tiny, barely 2 feet tall, with silvery blue skin that seemed to shimmer even in the dim light. The creature wore what looked like once elegant robes, now torn and covered in sand. "Hello," Sarah said softly, her universal translator converting her words into the major known alien languages. "I'm here to help." The small figure flinched and tried to press further into the corner. Now Sarah could see its face, delicate features twisted in fear and exhaustion. It was clearly female, with large, almond-shaped eyes that shimmered like opals. "Water." Sarah's translator picked up the weak response in Lumini, the language of one of the most advanced species in this sector. "Please, water." Sarah quickly pulled out her canteen and approached slowly, kneeling to appear less threatening. "Here," she said, holding out the water. "Drink slowly." The tiny alien's hands shook as she took the canteen. Sarah helped her hold it, noting how the alien's fingers were long and elegant despite her small size. After a few careful sips, some life seemed to return to her eyes. "I am Mira," she said through the translator. They left me here." Sarah's medical scanner showed severe dehydration and exhaustion, but no injuries. "Who left you here, Mira?" "My people. The Lumini." Mira's voice trembled. "I am defective. Too small. Not worthy of resources." She looked down at her tiny hands. "It is our way. The imperfect must not burden society." Sarah felt anger rising in her chest. She had heard rumors about the Lumini's obsession with genetic perfection, but this was barbaric. "Well, that's not our way," she said firmly. "I'm Staff Sergeant Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force, and I'm getting you out of here." Mira's eyes widened. But the protocols, the quarantine laws." Sarah was already calling up her vehicle on remote control. "Some rules are meant to be broken," she said, helping Mira to her feet. The alien was so light, she barely weighed anything at all. "Besides, I have a feeling letting you die out here would be a far bigger violation of human protocols." As her patrol vehicle rolled up, Sarah caught a glimpse of movement in the distance, more shadows in more caves. She made a mental note of the location. If there was one abandoned defective, there might be others. But first, she had to get Mira to safety. Sarah didn't know it yet, but her simple act of compassion was about to change 2 civilizations forever. Sarah's patrol vehicle sped across the desert, kicking up clouds of sand behind it. In the passenger seat, Mira sat quietly, wrapped in an emergency blanket that made her look even smaller. The tiny alien kept glancing at Sarah, as if expecting her to change her mind and throw her back into the desert. "We'll be at the base in 10 minutes, Sarah said, checking her vehicle's navigation system. "Try to drink a little more water." As they approached the human base, Sarah's mind raced. She knew she should take Mira directly to xenological containment. It was standard procedure for any new alien contact. But something about those cold, sterile rooms felt wrong for someone who had already suffered so much. Change of plans, Sarah muttered, turning her vehicle toward the base's medical wing instead. She pulled into her private parking spot, hidden from the main security cameras. "What will happen to me?" Mira asked, her translator making her soft voice sound metallic. "First, we get you healthy again," Sarah replied, helping Mira out of the vehicle. "The rest we'll figure out together." Sarah used her security clearance to enter through a side door, carrying Mira wrapped in the blanket. They made it halfway to her quarters when a stern voice stopped them. "Staff Sergeant Chen." Sarah froze. Behind her stood Colonel Martinez, her commanding officer, arms crossed and eyebrows raised. "Sir, I can explain," Sarah said, instinctively holding Mira closer. The colonel's eyes fixed on the small bundle in Sarah's arms. "I should hope so, Sergeant, because it looks like you're smuggling an unauthorized alien into my base." Mira trembled, but Sarah stood her ground. "Sir, this is Mira. She's Lumini. I found her abandoned in the desert. She needs medical attention. And the xenological containment facility is in the opposite direction because she's not a threat, sir. She's a victim." Sarah took a deep breath. The Lumini abandoned her to die because she was born too small. They call it genetic purification. It's murder, sir. Colonel Martinez's stern expression flickered. He stepped closer, looking at Mira more carefully. After what felt like forever, he spoke again. "Follow me, both of you." He led them not to the brig or containment, but to his private office. Once inside, he closed the door and activated the privacy shields. "Show me," he said quietly. Sarah set Mira down gently on a chair. The tiny alien looked up at the colonel, her opal eyes filled with a mixture of fear and hope. "I am considered defective," Mira explained, her translator making her words clear. "Among my people, genetic perfection is everything. Those who do not meet the standards are removed. It is meant to keep our species strong." Colonel Martinez sat down heavily in his chair. "And how many others are removed?" "Many," Mira whispered. "Every cycle, those who are too tall, too short, or born with even minor variations are taken to the desert. It is our way." The colonel looked at Sarah. "You realize this could cause an interplanetary incident. The Lumini are one of the most advanced species we've encountered. Their technology—" "Sir," Sarah interrupted, "with respect, any species that abandons its children to die isn't advanced at all." A long silence followed. Finally, Colonel Martinez nodded slowly. "Dr. Rivera will examine her in my private medical suite. No records, nothing official. Not yet." He turned to Mira. "You'll be safe here, but we need to be smart about this. The Lumini will come looking eventually." Sarah felt relief flood through her. "Thank you, sir." "Don't thank me yet, Sergeant," the colonel said, already typing on his comm unit. "This could either be the best or worst decision of our careers. And something tells me we've just stepped into something much bigger than a single rescue." As they left the office, Sarah saw Mira smile for the first time. It was small and hesitant, like she wasn't quite sure how to do it, but it was real. Whatever came next, that smile made it worth it. 3 days after Mira's rescue, Sarah watched the tiny alien explore Dr. Rivera's medical office with curious eyes. The change in Mira was amazing. Her silvery blue skin now glowed with health, and she moved with graceful confidence. But their peaceful routine was about to be shattered. "They're here," Colonel Martinez announced, striding into the medical bay. "A Lumini delegation just landed. They're demanding to inspect the base." Sarah stepped protectively closer to Mira. "How did they know?" "They say they detected unauthorized Lumini life signs." The colonel's face was grim. "Their ambassador, High Commander Vale, is leading the delegation personally." Mira's small hands began to shake. Was my clan leader. He ordered my abandonment himself. Before they could move Mira to a safer location, the medical bay doors slid open. 3 tall Lumini entered, their perfect forms making them look like living statues. In the middle stood High Commander Vale, nearly 7 feet tall, his silvery skin flawless, and his movements precise. Ah, Vale's translator conveyed his cold voice. There is our little problem. His perfect features showed only disgust as he looked at Mira. Humans, you have interfered with our sacred traditions. The defective one must be returned for proper processing. Sarah stepped in front of Mira. She has a name. It's Mira. And she's under our protection. Vale's eyes narrowed. Protection. You mistake our purpose. We do not harm the defective ones. We simply allow nature to correct our species' mistakes. It is mercy. Mercy? Dr. Rivera spoke up, anger clear in her voice. I've treated Mira. She's perfectly healthy aside from being smaller than your standard. There's nothing wrong with her. You do not understand our ways, Vale said dismissively. Our civilization achieves perfection through careful cultivation. The defective must not pass on their flaws. It is how we have advanced so far beyond other species. Colonel Martinez stepped forward. Ambassador Vale, Mira has requested asylum under human protection. We've already sent the paperwork to both our governments. The temperature in the room seemed to drop as Vale's perfect features twisted in anger. You dare. This is an internal Lumini matter. Return the defective one immediately, or there will be consequences. Sarah felt Mira grip her hand, but instead of trembling, the tiny alien stepped forward. I am not defective. Mira's voice was small but clear. I am different, and the humans have shown me that different is not wrong. Vale looked at her like she was dirt on his shoes. Listen to it speak as if it has worth. Perhaps we have been too lenient with these abandoned ones. Perhaps a more permanent solution is needed. Try it. Sarah's hand moved to her sidearm. The whole base is watching this conversation. Any action against Mira will be considered an act of aggression against Earth forces. Colonel Martinez nodded. Furthermore, we have evidence of other abandoned Lumini in the desert. Our humanitarian laws require us to help them. All of them. You would risk war over these worthless ones. Vale demanded. We would risk war to save innocent lives, Martinez replied calmly. Every time. Vale stared at them for a long moment. You have made a grave mistake. The Lumini High Council will hear of this. You cannot protect every defective one we find. Our ways have kept us strong for millennia. Maybe it's time for your ways to change, Sarah suggested. As Vale and his delegation swept out of the medical bay, Mira looked up at Sarah with worried eyes. There are others, she whispered. Many others, hidden in the desert. Some too young to survive long. Sarah exchanged looks with Colonel Martinez. They both knew this was just the beginning. Then we better find them, Sarah said firmly. All of them. Behind them, Dr. Rivera was already preparing medical supplies. The real mission was about to begin. Under the cover of darkness, Sarah's patrol vehicle glided silently across the desert sand. Beside her sat Mira, now wearing a modified human combat suit, while in the back, 2 more soldiers, Corporal James and Private Rodriguez, checked their medical supplies. The next cave system is 2 kilometers ahead, Mira said, studying a holographic map. My people, they always abandon the unwanted ones near water sources. It gives them a few days to. She couldn't finish the sentence. Not anymore, Sarah said firmly. Not if we can help it. Their vehicle stopped near a cluster of rocks. Heat signatures showed 3 life forms hiding deep in the caves. As they approached on foot, they heard crying, the unmistakable sound of a child. Hello, Mira called out in her native language. We're here to help. The humans are with me. At first, nothing. Then, slowly, 3 small figures emerged from the darkness. 2 were children, probably no more than the equivalent of 6 Earth years old. One was too tall for their age, the other had slightly different colored skin. Behind them stood an adult Lumini, barely 3 feet tall, protecting them. "I am Kex," the adult said through their translator. "I was abandoned here 2 days ago. I found the little ones yesterday. We share the water, but—" He looked down at the children. "They are so young." Sarah's team quickly moved in with water and medical supplies. The children were terrified at first, but Mira's presence seemed to calm them. She spoke to them softly while Dr. Rivera's voice came through their comms, guiding the medical treatment. "Base, this is Chen," Sarah reported. "We found 3 more. 2 children. Preparing for transport." "Copy that, Chen," Colonel Martinez replied. "Be advised, we're tracking Lumini patrols in the area. Make it quick." As they helped the rescued Lumini into their vehicle, Kex told their story. He had been a teacher before being deemed too short for his position. The children had been taken from their families just days ago. New genetic scanning technology had identified them as potentially disruptive to the genetic line. "They're getting worse," Mira whispered to Sarah. "They used to wait until adulthood to judge. Now they take children too." Suddenly, their vehicle sensors blared a warning. 2 Lumini patrol ships were approaching fast. "Hold on." Sarah gummed the engine, and their vehicle shot forward, skimming over the sand. The children huddled close to Kex, while Rodriguez and James manned the defensive shields. "Unauthorized transport." A cold voice came over their comms. "Return the defective ones immediately." "Sorry, bad connection." Sarah called back, swerving between rock formations. Their vehicle was smaller and more maneuverable than the Lumini ships, but the patrol had better weapons. A warning shot lit up the night sky. The children whimpered, but Mira started singing softly to them. An old Lumini lullaby that seemed to calm them despite the chaos. "Base, we need cover," Sarah called. "Already on it," Colonel Martinez replied. Suddenly, the night lit up with flares from the human base's defense systems. The Lumini ships had to pull up to avoid the show of force, giving Sarah's team the chance they needed. They shot through the base's shields just as they closed, the Lumini patrol forced to turn back at the boundary line. Inside, medical teams were already waiting. As they helped the rescued Lumini out of the vehicle, Sarah saw tears in Kex's eyes. "Why?" he asked. "Why do you help us when our own people won't?" Sarah looked at Mira, who was still holding the children's hands. "Because where we come from, different isn't wrong. It just means you have something unique to offer." Colonel Martinez approached them, his face serious. "That's 7 rescued this week. The Lumini Council is threatening sanctions. Let them," Sarah said, watching the medical team lead their newest refugees to safety. "We're not stopping." The colonel smiled slightly. "No, Sergeant, we're just getting started." 2 weeks after the first rescue, Sarah sat in a secret meeting room deep within the human base. Around her sat 20 rescued Lumini of various sizes and colors, each one deemed imperfect by their society. Mira stood at the front, using a holographic display to show desert maps. Another group was abandoned here yesterday. Mira pointed to a red dot. A family unit. The parents refused genetic modification for their child, so all 3 were cast out. Sarah felt her fist clench. The Lumini's cruelty seemed to be getting worse, not better. But something else was happening too, something unexpected. "We received this message today," Colonel Martinez said, activating another hologram. A tall Lumini appeared, their features hidden by a cloak. "It seems not all Lumini agree with their leaders." The message played. "There are more of us who question the old ways. We hide our differences, but we want to help." The next group marked for abandonment includes 5 children. "We can delay their transport for 6 hours. Save them." Kex, the rescued teacher, spoke up. "It's starting. The underground resistance we always hoped for, but feared to create." Sarah leaned forward. "How many inside your society oppose these practices?" More than the leadership knows, Mira replied. Many hide minor imperfections with technology or surgery. They live in constant fear of discovery. Suddenly, their communications officer burst in. Sir, we're picking up encrypted transmissions across the Lumini networks. Someone is spreading images of our rescued people, showing them healthy, happy, and thriving. They watched as images appeared on the main screen. Rescued Lumini children playing in the base's garden dome. Kex teaching a mixed class of human and Lumini children. Mira working confidently alongside human scientists. The truth is getting out, Colonel Martinez said with a slight smile. And it's causing quite a stir. But their small victory was short-lived. Emergency alarms blared through the base. The security officer's voice crackled over the comm. Multiple Lumini ships approaching. They're demanding immediate landing clearance. Sarah turned to Mira. How did they find out about our sanctuary? They didn't. Mira's eyes widened in surprise. Look. The security feeds show the incoming ships weren't military vessels. They were civilian transports. As they watched, the ships landed, and their doors opened to reveal dozens of Lumini of all sizes and variations. Please, their leader called out over the comms. We seek sanctuary. We can no longer live under their laws of perfection. Colonel Martinez looked at Sarah and Mira. Well, this complicates things. No, Sarah said firmly. This is exactly what we wanted. Change has to come from within their society. These people are choosing freedom. Over the next few hours, they processed over 60 new refugees. Each had a story. Parents protecting their children from genetic correction. Workers hiding their natural variations. Young people refusing to undergo mandatory genetic optimization. The High Council will respond harshly, Kex warned, as they helped settle the newcomers. Let them try, Sarah replied, watching Mira organize accommodation teams. Look how far we've come already. The tiny alien I found dying in the desert now leads rescue operations and helps run this sanctuary. Colonel Martinez joined them, his face serious but hopeful. Our own government has officially declared this base a sanctuary for genetic refugees. We have protection under interplanetary law. It won't stop them, Mira said softly. But it might make others brave enough to stand up, to question the old ways. Sarah looked at the growing community around them. Humans and Lumini working together. Children playing without fear. Differences celebrated instead of condemned. This is just the beginning, she said. And there's no going back now. Little did they know, high in the Lumini capital, their actions had already set in motion events that would shake an entire civilization to its core. The human base's main conference room was tense. On one screen, the Lumini High Council's ultimatum played on repeat. Return all genetic defectives within 24 hours or face immediate military action. Sarah stood beside Mira, watching Colonel Martinez argue with Earth Command via hologram. They now protected over 300 rescued Lumini, and the numbers grew daily. We can't back down now, Sarah said firmly. Wait, Mira suddenly stepped forward, her small form trembling with excitement. There's something you need to see. She connected her data pad to the main screen. I've been studying our ancient records, trying to understand why my people became so obsessed with genetic perfection. The screen filled with old Lumini texts and images. 3,000 years ago, our people met another advanced species, the architects. They were perfect beings of pure energy. Our ancestors thought they had achieved this form through genetic perfection. But that's not what happened. Colonel Martinez turned from his other call, interested. No. Mira's voice grew stronger. I found hidden records. The architects were never physical beings at all. They were a naturally evolved energy species. Our ancestors completely misunderstood everything. All our laws of genetic purity, all the suffering, it's based on a mistake. Before they could process this revelation, the base's alarm screamed to life. Multiple Lumini warships entering orbit. The security officer shouted over the comms. They're charging weapons. Base defenses online, Martinez ordered. But we can't fight their entire fleet. We don't have to fight, Mira said quickly. We have to show them the truth. Let me broadcast to all Lumini frequencies. Please. Martinez hesitated for only a second before nodding. Do it. Mira stepped up to the communication array, her small form standing straight and proud. Sarah helped her connect to all channels. People of Lumini, Mira's voice rang out, translated into all languages. I am one you called defective, abandoned to die. But I am alive, thanks to human compassion. And I have discovered the truth about our society's greatest lie. She transmitted the ancient records. The architects we worshipped were never physical beings. Our quest for genetic perfection was based on a total misunderstanding. We have been abandoning and killing our own people for a false goal. In orbit, the Lumini warships stopped their approach. Look at us, Mira continued, her voice growing stronger. Look at your children, your friends, your family members who hide their differences in fear. We are all Lumini. Our differences make us stronger, not weaker. The humans showed me that diversity brings strength, new ideas, new ways of thinking. The main screen suddenly lit up with thousands of incoming transmissions, Lumini from all over their empire, sharing their own stories of hidden differences, of lost family members, of secret pain. High Commander Vale's face appeared on the screen, his perfect features twisted with rage. These are lies. Our purity is what makes us strong. But another voice cut him off. An elderly member of the High Council stood up. No, I have hidden my own genetic variations for 70 years. I watched my sister die in the desert because her eyes were the wrong color. Enough. More council members stood. More voices joined in. The warships in orbit powered down their weapons. Sarah smiled at Mira, who was crying quietly. You did it, she whispered. No, Mira replied, taking Sarah's hand. We did it. Humanity showed us a better way. The base erupted in cheers as the High Council officially suspended all genetic purity laws, pending full review. Vale and his supporters were quickly removed from power. But as Sarah watched the celebrations, she knew this was just the beginning. Changing laws was one thing. Changing hearts and minds would take time. Ready for the real work to begin? She asked Mira. The tiny alien who had started it all smiled confidently. Together, we can accomplish anything. 1 month after the Great Revelation, Sarah watched from the observation deck as hundreds of Lumini ships filled the sky above the human base. But this time, they weren't coming with threats. They were bringing families back together. Another reunion transport is landing. Mira called out excitedly. She now wore a special uniform marking her as the official ambassador between humans and Lumini. In the main landing area, Sarah watched a touching scene unfold. A tall Lumini woman rushed forward to embrace a much shorter man. Her brother, abandoned 20 years ago, now found alive in one of the desert sanctuaries. 342 families reunited so far, Kex reported, checking his datapad. The former teacher now led the reunification program, but we're still finding more survivors in remote areas. Suddenly, their attention was drawn to a commotion near the base entrance. A group of young Lumini were arguing with some older ones. Sarah and Mira hurried over. You can't just forget what they did to us. A young Lumini shouted. She had darker skin than the others, something that would have meant death just months ago. They threw us away like garbage. Peace, sister, Mira stepped between them. Anger is natural, but hate will only continue the cycle. Sarah watched as Mira handled the situation. The tiny alien she'd found dying in the desert had grown into a powerful leader. When Mira spoke, both young and old Lumini listened. We must learn from humans, Mira explained to the group. They are not perfect. They have made many mistakes in their history, but they learned to celebrate their differences, to grow stronger through diversity. Colonel Martinez joined them, bringing important news. The Lumini High Council has just passed the Protection of Genetic Diversity Act. It's now illegal to discriminate based on genetic variations. Laws can change quickly, Sarah commented. Hearts take longer. She was right. Despite the official changes, they still faced resistance. Some Lumini still clung to the old beliefs. Hidden groups still tried to enforce genetic purity, but they were fighting a losing battle against the tide of change. In the base's new education center, Sarah watched human and Lumini children playing together. Among them was a group of newly rescued children, still shy but slowly opening up. One little girl, barely larger than a human toddler, was teaching a human child a Lumini counting game. That's what the future looks like, Mira said softly, joining Sarah. Not perfect, but beautiful in its differences. An emergency alert interrupted their moment. Ambassador Mira, a voice called over the comm. We've located another desert sanctuary. At least 30 survivors, including children. They've been hiding for years, afraid to seek help. Tell them they don't have to hide anymore. Mira replied firmly. She turned to Sarah. Ready for another rescue mission, my friend. Sarah checked her gear with a smile. Always. As they prepared to leave, they passed the base's main hall. Its walls were now covered with photos and stories, a memorial to those lost to the old ways, and a celebration of those who survived. At the center was a simple image, a human soldier helping a tiny alien out of a desert cave. Sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest acts of kindness, Mira said, touching the picture gently. Sarah put a hand on her friend's shoulder. And sometimes the strongest people come in the smallest packages. Outside, the twin suns set over the desert that had once been a place of death, but was now a symbol of rebirth. More ships arrived, carrying those who had hidden their differences for years, now free to be themselves. The revolution wasn't over, it was just beginning. But this time, no one would have to face it alone. 1 year after finding Mira in the desert, Sarah stood in her dress uniform before a massive crowd. The new Lumini Human Unity Center, built where the old military base once stood, was being officially opened. Hard to believe this all started with one patrol. Colonel Martinez, now General Martinez, said beside her. The desert around them had transformed. Where there was once only sand, now stood a thriving city. Lumini of all sizes and variations lived and worked alongside humans. Gardens bloomed in the desert, watered by advanced Lumini technology combined with human innovation. Ambassador Mira is ready to speak, a young aide announced. Sarah watched with pride as Mira stepped onto the stage. Though still tiny compared to most Lumini, she carried herself with quiet confidence. The crowd fell silent. 1 year ago, I was abandoned in the desert to die. Mira began, her voice clear and strong. I was considered worthless because I was different, but a human soldier taught me that being different wasn't wrong. It was special. She gestured to the city around them. Look at us now. Our scientists of different sizes can reach places and solve problems others couldn't. Our children of various colors help us see beauty in new ways. Our people of all shapes bring unique perspectives to every challenge. In the front row, Kex sat with his school students, a mixed group of human and Lumini children. Among them was a tall Lumini girl who would once have been abandoned, now excelling in athletics. Beside her, a tiny Lumini boy like Mira was winning awards in engineering. We have much to be proud of, Mira continued. 5,000 abandoned ones found and reunited with their families. New laws protecting genetic diversity. But most importantly, a new understanding between our peoples. Sarah remembered their struggles over the past year. Not everything had been easy. Some still resisted change. But for every problem, they found both human and Lumini working together to solve it. And now, Mira smiled, I have a special announcement. The Lumini High Council and Earth Government have approved the establishment of the Diversity Protection Force, a joint human Lumini team dedicated to preventing genetic discrimination across all worlds. The crowd erupted in cheers. Sarah felt tears in her eyes as Mira called her to the stage. Staff Sergeant Sarah Chen, Mira said formally, for your compassion, courage, and dedication to protecting all forms of life. You are appointed as the first commander of the Diversity Protection Force. As Sarah accepted the new rank insignia, she saw faces in the crowd that told the whole story. The former High Commander Vale, now working as a genetic diversity counselor, learning from his past mistakes. The children who had once hidden in caves, now playing freely in the sunlight. The families reunited, the wounds healing, the future brightening. "A year ago, you saved my life," Mira said quietly to Sarah as they stood together. "But in doing so, you saved our entire society from itself." "You did that yourself," Sarah replied. "All I did was show a little kindness." The celebration lasted well into the night. Under the stars, humans and Lumini danced together, shared stories, and planned for the future. Where there had once been fear and rejection, now there was hope and acceptance. In the desert beyond the city, small monuments marked the spots where the abandoned ones had once hidden. But they weren't monuments of sadness anymore. They were reminders of how far they'd come, and how much farther they could go together. "Ready for our next adventure?" Mira asked as they watched the twin suns rise on a new day. Sarah smiled at her friend, the tiny alien who had helped change two civilizations forever. "With you leading the way, always." The desert winds carried the sound of children laughing, of families reuniting, of two species learning to be better together. And somewhere out there, another different soul waited to be found, to be saved, to be celebrated for exactly who they were. The end.